Hi everybody, over the course of the past few weeks, we have been talking about the Azorius Convoke aggro deck. We've talked about the deck of itself, the card choices in the deck, the overall strategy of the deck, how to sideboard against the top 10 most popular decks, different flex slots and builds in the deck, and nuances and play patterns you need to know if you're playing for or against this deck. So I'm going to combine them all into one video, one giant deep dive. Enjoy. So this is the standard Azorius Convoke deck. And really, I don't know why we call it Convoke. Really, it's an Azorius aggro deck. And what this deck is effectively doing is putting a bunch of powerful but cheap creatures on the battlefield all at once so that you have a massive Regal Bunnicorn, you tap things down, get things out of the way, draw cards off of Enduring Curiosity, have a Steel Seraph power them up, and just overwhelm your opponent. It's a super fun deck to play if you like combat, because that's what this deck is attempting to do. Now, as far as the lands go, there's nothing really special happening. We have some man lands, but really it's just blue-white lands. There's no like hidden synergies. Besides, I guess we can, when you make the thing with Reckless Anchorage, you can then tap it with Warden of the Inner Sky, or if you man up Soulstone Sanctuary, you can do a really similar thing. And really, this deck is divided up into creatures and non-creatures. And I'm just going to talk about the creatures first. First off, we have Novice Inspector. It's a 2/1 for 1 when it enters Investigate, which means create a clue token, which is an artifact. This card's decent because, one, it's just a 1 mana body, and we can cash in the clue for an extra card. But there's also extra synergy with Warden of the Inner Sky, which is another 1 mana 1/2. But it says when it has 3 or more counters on it, it has Flying and Vigilance, which is very powerful, and we can tap 3 untapped artifacts and or creatures to put a +1/+1 counter on it and scry 1. Now, Novice Inspector is a creature and an artifact, so it creates 2 permanents for that Warden of the Inner Sky to get very big and very powerful and be able to cash in on a frankly small body. Now, Spyglass Siren is also doing a really similar thing. It's a 1 mana 1/1 with flying. When it enters, create a map token. Now, a map is an artifact, which means it's creating 2 permanents for that Warden of the Inner Sky as well. But also it has flying, so it has a little bit more evasion. And you can cash in on these artifacts once they don't become relevant for Warden of the Inner Sky. We're playing 4 Flood Pitch Drowner. It is a 2 mana 2/1 with Flash and Vigilance. When it enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it so it doesn't untap for 1 turn. And we can pay 2 mana and tap it to shuffle Flood Pitch Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into the owner's library. So for 4 mana, it can get rid of a permanent forever, which is really sweet. But really, it's just getting things out of the way so that we can jam with our massive creatures or flood the board with our creatures. Speaking of massive creatures, a lot of what we're trying to do is capitalize on Regal Bunnicorn. Regal Bunnicorn is a 2 mana star, whereas power and toughness are equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. The cool part about this card is that enchantments, the artifacts we get from Spyglass Siren and Novice Inspector, all count as these non-land permanents. And so, you know, we play Spyglass Siren or Novice Inspector on turn 1, Regal Bunnicorn on turn 2, and it's already a 3/3, and really only gets bigger from there, especially if we kind of give it lifelink with Sheltered by Ghosts and stuff like that. And so getting things out of the way, often we can just like Alpha Strike with a giant Regal Bunnicorn, which we absolutely love. As far as continue to talk about the creatures, we're playing 3 Enduring Curiosity. It's a 4 mana 4/3 with Flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And when it dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it's an enchantment, and it can still has that curiosity effect. Cool part about this card is that a lot of our cards are evasive or absolutely massive, or get blockers out of the way, or make other things evasive, or things like that. And so being able to draw a bunch of cards in a deck where our plan is just to flood the board with creatures is super powerful. Steel Seraph is a 6 mana 5/4 with flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains your choice of Flying, Vigilance, or Lifelink until end of turn. However, has prototype for 1 white, and it's a 3/3 when you prototype it. So this can give evasion, this can give lifelink so that we don't die to the red decks, this can give vigilance so that we can block, which is probably the least common thing. Giving evasion to that Regal Bunnicorn or really any creature when Enduring Curiosity is out is very powerful. Also has flying in and of itself, and we can cash in and make it a 5/4 if we have 6 mana instead of 3, which is super strong as well. And then we're playing 4 Mockingbird. Mockingbird is blue and X, has flying. You may have Mockingbird enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast Mockingbird, except as a bird in addition to its other types, and as flying. So we have that evasiveness, which is really important for, like, you know, flooding the board board and just dealing a bunch of damage, and Enduring Curiosity. But also we can copy any card we already have on the battlefield. We can draw 2 cards for every creature that lands, you know, if we have if we want to copy an Enduring Curiosity, or maybe more likely copying a Warden of the Inner Sky or a Regal Bunnicorn or anything like that, or getting things out of the way by copying a Flood Pitch Drowner, and now it has Vigilance and Flying. This is just a very, very powerful card. Now, as far as non-creature spells go, we're playing 4 Sheltered by Ghosts. It's a 2-mana aura where you enchant a creature you control. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leave the battlefield. And then the enchanted creature gets +1/+0, has lifelink, and ward 2. Putting lifelink on a giant thing like a Regal Bunnicorn is very strong. Again, this is a way to get things out of the way. Playing 4 of these main deck means that you're like 90% against the aggressive decks, which is really cool. And just all around a very powerful card. And then the rest are some flex slots, but cards that I really like. Unidentified Hovershift is a 3-mana vehicle that is 2/2. When it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less, and when it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests dread. So it doesn't actually give something back, it just has the manifest dread, which is we're totally okay with. The cool part about this is 2/2 with crew 1, so it removes something and creates an evasive way to cash in something like Novice Inspector. And they're paying a single Raise the Pass in the main deck. It's a 4-mana sorcery. Return all creature cards and mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is very good against the decks that like wipe the board, especially with cards like Split Up or have a lot of removal, and that's how they want to deal with our many creatures. So really, we're just like, we have a couple combos within the deck, but the essence of the deck is we're putting a bunch of creatures on the battlefield and trying to overwhelm our opponent. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing Elspeth's Smite to deal with these aggressive decks. A 1-mana instant deals 3 damage target attacking or blocking creature, and it would die the turn exile instead. Also happens to be very good against the Enduring cards as well. We're playing 3 Destroy Evil, destroying any problematic enchantments, like I'm thinking like Temporary Lockdown or something like that, but also getting rid of creatures with toughness 4 or greater. Rest in Peace as our Graveyard Hate. Split Up we can play in our deck because we can really make it a one-sided board wipe for any like Convoke-y mirror matches or aggressive decks where we can just like jam with everything, and then if they have things untapped, we just go untapped, or if they've been attacking, we untap and then we just say tapped, and it's a one-sided board wipe, which is very, very powerful. We're playing 2 more Raise the Pass. It's a 4-mana sorcery. Again, return all creature cards and mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Very good against decks with a lot of board wipes, against other Split Up decks. Very good against the black decks that are just removing your creatures as fast as possible. Protecting Negotiators, we're playing as a 2-mana instant that says if the spell is cooked, create a 1/1 white soldier token. And it says counter target spell unless controller pays 1 for each creature you control. Very good in this deck because we normally have a bunch of creatures anyway, and we want to be playing the Protect Negotiators against board wipes. Things like Sunfall or Day of Judgment or Split Up or whatever. Because very often we kind of have to overcommit to the board because that's sort of what we're doing as a deck, and we really, really don't want to be punished by that. And then we're playing 2 Tishana's Tidebinder. It's a 3-mana 3/2 with Flash. When it enters, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability, an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. This happens to be really good against Temporary Lockdown because it just kind of like stops that stuff. There's a lot of really fun and interesting corner cases that this deck has. Very good against like Enduring Curiosity, Planeswalkers, and just making things textless. But this is the Azorius Convoke deck in Standard. It is so fun. So if you look at this sideboard, Elspeth's Smite, mostly for the aggressive decks, but also decent against the Enduring cards. Destroy Evil for decks that have big budded creatures that we have a hard time attacking through, but also our Enchantment Hate. Rest in Peace is our Graveyard Hate. Split Up one-sided board wipes. Raise the Pass against decks that just run a lot of removal we need to rebuild against. Protect the Negotiators mostly against board wipes. And Tishana's Tidebinder against decks that have these triggered abilities that we feel like would be good to stop. So the most popular deck in Standard is the Esper Self-Bounce deck. Against Esper Self-Bounce, I like Tishana's Tidebinder just to stop some of these triggered abilities. And I actually don't like the rest of these cards. I'm actually just looking to just like super aggro them out. And so I'm going to sideboard out these clunky cards, bring in Tishana's Tidebinder, and that's how I'm going to sideboard against Esper. Notably, it's also how I'm going to sideboard against the Dimir Self-Bounce deck, which is the 5th most popular deck. Speaking of Dimir, the 2nd most popular deck is Dimir mid-range. Against Dimir mid-range, we're going to be siding this Elspeth Smite, being able to take out these attacking creatures so they can never Kaido, and being able to exile Enduring Curiosity and stuff like that is super powerful. I'm a fan of Split Up because they're very reliant on creatures just like we are, and I'm a fan of Raise the Past just because they sideboard into a lot of removal spells. Going to be sideboarding Elder Sheltered by Ghost just because it's really easy for them to answer and to stop, and we're just going to be shaving a Seal Seraph just to get a little less clunky, and this is how I sideboard against Dimir midrange. The third most popular deck is Golgari midrange. We're going to be siding Destroy Evil so we can get rid of the like Shieldrids and Preacher of the Schisms. And we're deciding to Raise the Past because they run an insane amount of removal. Bringing out Sheltered by Ghosts because it'll never stick around for very long, to be totally honest with you. And then we're shaving on a Steel Seraph just like we are against Dimir. That's how I sideboard against Golgari midrange. The fourth most popular deck is Gruul Aggro. Against Gruul Aggro, we're bringing in the Elspeth Smite. Just has additional removal, bringing in this Split Up as this one-sided board wipe, and then we're just going to be siding out of these slower cards, bringing out Raise the Past and 2 of the Enduring Curiosities, and leaning on our main deck Sheltered by Ghosts, and this is our sideboard against Gruul Aggro. The fifth most popular deck we've already talked about, Dimir Self Bounce. Against Gruul Prowess and Mono Red Prowess, we're also going to be sideboarding the same as we did as against Gruul Aggro. So Gruul Prowess is the 6th most popular deck, and Mono Red is the 9th most popular deck. Just as a reminder, this is how we are sideboarding against those decks. And so let's move on to the 7th most popular deck, which is Azorius Tempo. Against Azorius Tempo, we are bringing in our Rest in Peace, so they can't do their crazy reanimation nut, Destroy Evil so that we can get rid of the stuff after it's already entered the battlefield. Then we're going to be bringing out Raise the Past and bringing out Shelter by Ghost. This isn't an aggro deck, and it's not going to stay on the battlefield very long, especially post-board. So this is how I sideboard against Azorius Tempo, Azorius Oculus, whatever you want to call it. The 8th most popular deck is Jeskai Convoke. Against Jeskai Convoke, we are bringing in our Split Ups. And I actually like Tystana's Tidebinder against this deck as well, because we can counter the Knight Errant and the Imidane's Recruiter triggers and things like that. Going to be bringing out Raise the Past, and frankly, these cards that are not very fast and can be kind of clunky because we need to make sure we stay on our toes against this deck. So this is how I sideboard against Jeskai Convoke. The 9th most popular deck is Mono Red. We've already talked about that deck. And then the 10th most popular deck is Mono White. We're going to be bringing in our Destroy Evils, our Protect the Negotiators, and then we're going to be siding out of this just creature removal. We don't need Shelter by Ghosts or Unidentified Hover Ship or Raise the Past because a lot of their removal is exile. And so this is how I'm going to sideboard against Mono White Caretaker. So these are the non-flex slots in Azorius Convoke. These are the cards that you're pretty much bought into playing if you're playing this archetype. These 52 cards in the main deck and these 8 cards in the sideboard. You should pause the video and check it out if you need to, but really this is about how do we fill these 8 slots in the main deck and how do we fill these 7 slots in the sideboard? Well, these are our options. These 18 cards for the main deck and these 16 cards for the sideboard. Let's talk about them. First off, we need to add 1 more land. Our options are an additional plains, a Restless Anchorage, or a Soulstone Sanctuary. The additional plains is great because it's untapped mana, and white mana is our primary mana source. Restless Anchorage is a manland, and it provides blue and white. However, it enters tapped, which can be kind of problematic since this is an aggro deck. Soulstone Sanctuary enters untapped and is a manland, but it's colorless. So what are you looking for, right? Like, are you looking for better colors? You're looking for faster mana? Are you looking for, you don't care about your colors, you just want fast mana and a manland? It's a lot to think about, but you're going to pick one of these. You can play up to 2 Shard Mage's Rescue. Shard Mage's Rescue is a 1 mana flash enchantment that when it enters, the creature has hexproof for the rest of the turn. An enchanted creature gets +1/+1. It's very good against decks with a lot of spot removal. You could play the 4th Sheltered by Ghosts. Sheltered by Ghosts is excellent against aggro decks because when it enters, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. An enchanted creature gets +1/+0, has lifelink and ward 2. So you want this if you're better matchup against the aggro decks. You can play the 4th Flood Pits Drowner. It is a 2 mana 2/1 with Flash and Vigilance. When Flood Pits Drowner enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. You pay 2 mana and tap Flood Pits Drowner to shuffle Flood Pits Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's library. So this is really good to get things out of the way since we're an aggro deck and remove super problematic threats. You can play up to 2 Subterranean Schooner. It's a 2 mana 3/4 vehicle with crew 1. Whenever it attacks, target creature that crewed at this turn explores. This is kind of an interesting card. We have a lot of creatures that can crew it, and it allows us to have a much bigger like threat. Exploring often is drawing a card, and so this all around can be a very strong addition to your deck. You can play up to 2 Sanguine Evangelists. It has Battle Cry, so when it attacks, all the other creatures that are attacking get +1/+0. And when it enters or dies, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So it's 2 creatures in 1, and if you're going really, really wide, it pumps up your team. And so if you find yourself going wide a lot, or that's when Sanguine Evangelist is pretty solid. You can play an Unidentified Hovership. This is a 3-mana vehicle, 2/2 with flying and crew 1. When it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. When Unidentified Hovership leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner manifests dread. And so this indefinitely gets rid of larger creatures that might be in your way. So it's very good against decks that are looking to block. But also, if they ever answer Unidentified Hovership, then they don't get the creature back. They just manifest dread, which is excellent for us. It's also an evasive vehicle after it removes something, so that's relevant as well, and easily crewable. We can play 1 Kaido Cunning Infiltrator. Kaido Cunning Infiltrator is a planeswalker that starts at 3 loyalty. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a loyalty counter on Kaido. Its +1 is up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card, then discard a card. This is very good in a deck with cards like Regal Bunnicorn that end up absolutely massive, so that's relevant. Is -2 is create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token, and -6 you get an emblem that says whenever a player casts a blue spell, you get a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. It's very good against decks that are looking to block but aren't playing a ton of removal. Raise from the Past, we can play up to 2 of those in the main deck. It's a 4-mana sorcery. Return all creature cards mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Very good against decks that are playing a lot of removal spells. Allows us to essentially reset. You can play the 4th Enduring Curiosity. It's a 4/3 with flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. When Enduring Curiosity dies, if it was a creature, return to the battlefield under its own control as an enchantment. It's really good if you're looking to totally outcard your opponents. It's especially good against decks that are looking to go very long. And we could play Steel Seraph 3 and 4. It's a 6-mana 5/4 with flying. And at the end of combat in your turn, target creature you control gains your choice of flying, vigilance, or lifelink until end of turn. However, we can prototype it and have it be a 3/3 for 3 mana. This is great because it allows us to have a better matchup against the aggro decks because it can give lifelink to our large creatures. Can also be very evasive if people are looking to block. So you're going to be selecting 8 of these cards, one of them being a land, to be adding to your main deck. As far as the sideboard goes, we need 7 of these cards. So you could play up to 2 Elspeth's Smite, dealing 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Very good against the aggressive decks and against the Enduring Curiosity decks. You can play the 3rd Destroy Evil, good against enchantments and big budded blockers. Up to 2 Rest in Peace for additional graveyard hate. You can play the 4th Sheltered by Ghosts in the sideboard instead for that better aggro matchup. Play up to 2 Lauren of the Third Path. It's a 2/1 with vigilance. When Lauren of the Third Path enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. And you can tap it to have you and target opponent each draw a card. This is just great because it's a creature with vigilance, so we can attack with it and then tap it to like Warden or something, and just decent artifact or enchantment hate. We can play 1 Johnny Color of the Pride. This is actually played in the main deck in earlier versions of the deck. But it's a 3-mana planeswalker that starts at 4 loyalty. It's +1, put a +1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Really good on things like Warden that get things when they have more +1/+1 counters. It's -3 is target creature against flying and double strike until end of turn. This can kind of be a combo kill with Regal Bunnicorn, because Regal Bunnicorn is very often a 6/6, 7/7, 8/8 even, and being able to just like jump something and give it double strike is disgusting. And its -8 is create X 2/2 white cat creature tokens where X is your life total. Rarely going to do that because we're trying to combo kill with that. And if you feel like you can combo kill with Regal Bunnicorn, Johnny's kind of a cool card to play in the sideboard against decks that don't have a ton of removal. You can play the 2nd Split Up. These one-sided board wipes that are really good against other aggressive decks. You can play Raise the Past in the sideboard. We already talked about it in the main deck, but really good against decks that are looking to just kill our creatures. You can play the 4th Protect the Negotiators. If you're worried about board wipes. Cryptic Coat is an interesting card. When it enters, cloak the top card of your library and attach it to Cryptic Coat, which is essentially face down 2/2. A cryptic creature gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. And you can pay 2 mana to return Cryptic Coat to its owner's hand. This is pretty solid against decks with a lot of removal and that are going to go really, really long because we can pay 3 mana to get a creature that we could flip over very easily. If they answer that creature, we just return Cryptic Coat, replay it. That creature can't be blocked, so effectively it's a must answer, etc., etc. And we could play up to 2 Tishana's Tidebinder, answers dozens of cards. Zur, temporary lockdown, stuff like that immediately pop into my head, but it's so much we could play in the sideboard for this. So you're going to be selecting 7 of these sideboard cards, and alongside the 8 of these flex slots to join the 52 non-flex slots in the main deck and the 8 non-flex slots in the sideboard, you have your very own but stock build of Azorius Convoke in Standard. First off is remember that pretty much every permanent you have besides enchantments can be tapped for Warden. That includes vehicles, that includes the clue and map tokens, that includes everything. So if you have a Warden on the battlefield, unless you really need to block, make sure that during the second main phase, after you've attacked, tap the stuff for Warden. Or if you are going to attack with Warden, tap things that are summoning sick before you attack, because you can tap them for Warden even if they're summoning sick, because it's an extremely powerful card the bigger that you make it. And then the other big nuance that's important to know is comboing with Bunnicorn. So Regal Bunnicorn is often absolutely huge. And if you can play a Steel Seraph and give it Vigilance, it becomes very difficult to block. If you give it Flying, literally can't block it. And if you give it Lifelink, it's a way for you to keep up with the aggro decks. In addition to that, if you happen to be playing the Ajani Color of the Applied version, that can just be kind of a combo kill, where you play a big Regal Bunnicorn, play Ajani, jump it to give it Flying and Double Strike, and very often you can defeat them in just one turn, which is pretty sweet. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.